Hi, everybody. This is Blaine DeSantis, and I welcome you to another edition of Books and Looks. Yes, it's our weekly voyage of discovery in the wonderful world of books. Books that I've been reading and authors I've been interviewing. And today we are joined by a lovely author coming to us directly from the Isle of Wight. Yeah, over in the British Channel. She's coming to us today. Her name is Mary Grand. Her book is called A Christmas Murder. That's right. I don't do many Christmas books. Don't do many mysteries, but this one was so good, you're not going to miss this one because she has done a lovely, lovely job with this book. I can't stop gushing over it because I was guessing wrong, the wrong murderer. I was guessing so many things wrong. She does a wonderful job with plotting things. She's going to tell us about the Isle of Wight. She's going to tell us about these fictional characters she has. And, it's not a cozy mystery. You would think it's a cozy because it takes place at wintertime and it's, there's an amateur, not even amateur, but a lady who solves crimes, but it's not. It's more like Agatha Christie. Do you like Agatha Christie? Yeah. Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, Guy Marsh, this golden age of detective novels. This is what you're going to be reminded of by this book because it's well done. It's a fascinating look into this thing. And the thing I love about Mary is she didn't start writing until she was over 50. Again, we've said this time and again, friends, you're never too old. And I'm going to tell you what, she has written one heck of a wonderful series here over on the Isle of Wight. So you know what? Let's just go right into my interview with Mary Grand. Mary, welcome to Books and Looks.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Thank you.
This is a landmark day because this is Mary's first ever podcast that's coming into America. So I'm very happy to be hosting this.
Yeah, thank you. It's very exciting.
Yep. Apparently your publisher's pretty excited about this too, I heard.
Yeah, they certainly are. Yeah, everyone is.
And if Mary has survived the other night. Now, here in America, we're taping this after the election, but Mary had Guy Fawkes night over there. Tell us what happened on the Isle of Wight and Guy Fawkes night. Tell us about that.
Well, it to be honest, it goes on over a couple of nights. It tends to be when people think the weather suits that they do it either in the garden or they go to a big display. I have to say my cat hated it. She hides. The animals don't like it because I think fireworks have got so much bigger than they used to be. They're much louder and bangier than they used to be. So we have to
they
put the
are.
telly on and keep her in.
There you go. All right. Well, good. Glad you survived. Anyway, hey,
Yeah.
listen, tell us what prompted you to want to become an author?
Oh, now it's interesting because it should be encouraging for any of your listeners who are maybe a little bit older, because I didn't do any writing until I was 50. And I'd had a bit of time off work and I went to an evening class, how to write your first novel. And it really was just a way of going out and thinking of something to do. And I hadn't really thought that much about it. And then I had this fantastic teacher in the local college, wrote my first novel with her. I did her course twice because it was so good. And wrote my first novel, which I self-published. And that's how it all started. But it's never too late to start. Never.
Very good. That's absolutely correct. Now, from what I read about your bio, you were born in Wales, you lived in London, also in Hastings. Did you use those locales as settings for your first books?
Yeah, I think maybe it's the same for us all. You know, your roots stay with you, don't you? And I think I will always be Welsh, like in my DNA, where I was born, which is the capital of Wales, which is Cardiff. So my first two books are set in Wales, then they were my self-published ones. But I always have a Welsh character in my books because even though I set my later ones on the island.
There you go. Well, yesterday, my wife had company. She had a lady come over for breakfast, and I couldn't figure out her accent. And I said, "Where are you from?" She said, "I'm from
Uh,
Wales." Oh my God, a lady here from Wales. Now you're from Wales. Holy heck. Holy moly.
They're invading.
It is. Yeah, that's right. You're invading. Good job. Now, because you moved over to the Isle of Wight,
Yeah.
is that what made
Yeah.
you then want to set all these other books on the island there?
Well, actually, no, it didn't start that way. I've been over here over 30 years now. And I set my first books in Wales because that's where I felt like my spiritual home was. And then I was walking with my dog up on the downs not far from here. And I was walking with him and I looked down and I saw this little village down the bottom. And I thought, gosh, that looks so cozy and snug. And yet, villages are such a hotbed, really, because I think in many ways we think of as crime being in big cities. But in a village, I think everyone knows each other. Reputations actually matter. Your neighbours, the people in the shops, they all know each other. And I thought, and that's when I got the first idea for my very first Whodunit. And I wrote
Okay.
that, and that's how I became published because I sent that into a
Wow,
publisher, and that's how it
that's great.
started.
When was that first book published then?
Oh dear, I think it was about 5, 6 years ago.
Oh, you've been pretty busy then, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, I meant to write one every 10 months now, so
Oh,
I have
okay.
to
All right.
keep at it. Yeah.
That's good. Okay, now I'm a little bit confused, and please enlighten me if you wouldn't mind. You have
Yeah,
written now, this is the third book in what's been called the Isle of Wight Killings series,
yeah,
but you have
yeah,
two other murder mysteries that are set on the Isle of
yeah.
Wight. H- How do they differ and why?
Yeah, I started off by writing standalones set in different villages I know around the island. So they were just complete standalone one-offs. And then I came to write Death at Castle Cove 2 years ago, and I came to get to know Susan Flynn, my amateur detective, and her partnerish, Robert, who's an ex-policeman, and this lovely old lady, Alice. And when I finished, I thought, oh, I don't want to leave them. I'd like to use them again. So I talked to my editor, and she said, go on then, go for it. So the idea is not that although they do follow on and there is progression, I like it people can read them in any order because I'm terrible at reading things in order. So you can read them in any order you like.
Well, I love reading books in order because I think it shows how the author grows. I like to see the characters' growth and everything else. So,
Mm,
but I must admit, I jumped right in on, on the third book of
yeah,
this series. So, and I really enjoyed it. So, okay, well,
thank
that's
you.
very interesting. Did any of the characters from those first two books make it into the next three?
Yeah, yeah, I'm surprised actually how they well, obviously Susan is my amateur detective, so she's sort of in them all. Robert's in them all, her daughter, and I've even kept the same policewoman actor, police officer.
Oh, okay.
I think people like that, I don't
Oh,
know.
definitely. That's a familiarity that we like. We comfort. Yeah, like comfort food. Yeah, comfort
Yeah, it is.
characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you're on the Isle of Wight. Now, I'm going to be honest with you.
Mm.
I've never visited there. Most people, when I tell them you're in the Isle of Wight, they have no idea where you're at.
No,
And so,
no.
tell us a bit about, familiarize us. Where is the Isle of Wight? How big is it? How many people are there?
If you look at a map of Britain, right down the bottom, and we're about 3 miles off the coast, main coast of England, opposite Southampton and Portsmouth. And I wrote it down because I'm hopeless with numbers, but apparently it's 146 square miles, about half the size of Singapore, apparently. But it's nothing like Singapore. There's no cities, it's all villages, beaches, downland. It's a very pretty, pretty place. And we are completely cut off from the mainland. We have no bridges or anything like that. So we're really stuffed when it when the weather gets bad because there's no bridge.
How many people live there?
It's about 140,000. So it's quite a lot, actually. I think people, even mainlanders, are very surprised at how big we are. We've now got two MPs. We've got obviously schools, our own hospital, and things like that.
Is it a big vacation in the summertime? Do a lot of people come over to vacation there?
Yeah, they're certainly over the round Sandown, the other side of the island to where I live. I live on what's called the west side, and it's a little bit more remote. But yeah, it's very, very full with the ferries and things. If I want to go pop over in August, for example, I will have to book a ferry in advance because everything gets booked
Okay.
up. It's mad.
Really?
Goes crazy, and we don't have any motorways or anything like that, so the roads get completely congested.
Oh my. Oh
Mm.
my. Well, now this may be too personal. If you don't want to answer, that's fine. But why would you move to the Isle of Wight? What was it that drew you in the first place to the island?
Yeah, we came from my husband's job. He's a lawyer, and he was asked to apply for a job here. And I said, "We can't go and live on an island. I just had a tiny baby, and I'd never been here before." And I can remember coming over for the interview and looking over at the mainland and saying, "That's home. We're on an island." But that was 30 odd years ago, and I love it.
Don't miss it at all.
Well, we go back and forth a lot. All my family's
Right.
on the as we call the mainland, you know.
Mhm. Good. Now, I read somewhere where you also taught deaf children. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, I did. On the when I lived on the mainland in Hastings, that was mainly. I was a head of department there with children, deaf children who were integrated into mainstream schools. And then when I came over here, there were slightly less opportunities, but I did fill in for somebody on maternity leave, and that was great. Went round all the schools.
That's wonderful. Like you said, you were 50, and what are you going to do? So you start to write. That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
Wow. Now, what I like about this book, many, many things I liked about this book, Mary, but one of the things I like is on the very first page, you have a main character dying. He's dead. He or she is dead.
yeah,
Are all your books like this? And if not, why did you start this one
yeah.
with a death?
Well, it's interesting. Until I saw you were going to ask that question, I hadn't even realised that I had this pattern going. I tend because the murder is normally only a day or two after. We're not talking years before the story starts. But I think by starting with the murder, and I realised I always write it from the murderer's point of view. So you sort of get into his head before the book starts. It tells the reader where they're going and what sort of book it is, really. And it sets an atmosphere, a darkness that people think, oh, there's going to be a death. But I don't let you know at that point who's going to die.
It's rare, though. It's rare to start a book with the main character dead. That's, I think that's ingenious on your part. I loved it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Very, very.
I don't know how it happened, really.
That's okay. Who knows where genius and imagination comes from? It just comes from up in those
Yeah.
little gray cells up there. Yeah. Well, now,
Yeah.
tell us a bit about your main characters. Who are some of your main characters? We have Susan, and then we have something called the
Yeah.
Fern, Fern family. Tell us a bit about them.
Ah, the Fern family. They're a
Mhm.
highly dysfunctional family. I wouldn't want to be on holiday with them. Duncan Fern is an editor of what we call a tabloid. Do you have a sort of
Mhm.
tabloid
Yes.
newspapers
Mhm.
in America?
Yep.
Yeah, sort of some news, but quite sensational and celebrity based type stuff. And he's an editor of that sort of newspaper. And he's now in his 70s, an older man. And he brings his family, his adult family, to the Isle of Wight in this Tudor manor, which is becoming a very exclusive type of hotel for the Christmas weekend. And so they're all sort of confined in this house, which then gets snowed in on an island. So it's very much that sort of vibe.
Okay.
So there's Duncan, and he's got this new glamorous wife who's American called Kristen. And there's a lot more to her than meets the eye as well, which is a good one. And then he's got two children, Bryson, who's a crime writer, and Hayley, who's a very sort of highly sensitive little flower. And she's an editor. And then they both have their partners, one who is Bryson's partner is Victoria, who's a food critic, because I watch loads and loads of food programs, and I thought, why not have a food critic in this? So I've got a food critic, and I've got Hayley's partner is a personal trainer, because I'm seeing a trainer at the moment, so I thought I'll put a trainer in. And the final main character is Antoine, who is the sub-editor of this newspaper, but at war with Duncan.
Yeah. Antoine, that doesn't sound British.
No, he's French. He's French.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There's a sort of whole French thing going on as well. Yeah.
Okay, well, I want you to know, friends, and I've been in touch with Mary numerous times. I keep telling her that I knew who it was. I got it. Wait, I didn't get it. Okay, so this is one of those books
Hey.
where early on, early on, you leave us thinking, aha, I know who it is. And I don't. So it was wonderful done. Now, the patriarch, Duncan Fern. He is Duncan Fern, the
Mm.
patriarch of the family. Did you pattern him after any one person?
No, not really at all. I think I remember watching a program, like a a series on telly. It was just pretend, fiction about a young chap who was a tabloid editor, and he was sort of torn in all these different ways, really, because he was originally a very good journalist, but he'd sort of sold his soul a little bit. And I remember when I was watching it thinking, I wonder what he'd be like, you know, oh, when he's older. Wonder how he. And so the seed was planted then. I think when I saw him, and Duncan is a bit like that character in my head. Many years on, really looking, and he's very much looking back on his life in this book.
Okay. See, I'm sitting here thinking Rupert Murdoch. I'm thinking Rupert
Oh my
Murdoch's got to
goodness!
be it's got to be the inspiration for this, but it wasn't. Okay.
No,
Well, see,
no,
I'm
no, it
wrong.
wasn't. No.
Folks, I'm wrong again. Well, what can I say? I'm wrong again. Mary, she's something else. I love her. Oh my God. Well, tell me. Okay, and that's a little bit of friends. Is a little bit of an involved question. Just stick around with us.
Hmm,
Why did they come to the island?
hmm.
What time of year was it? And then tell me about Twixmas. Okay, we're going to consult a
Okay,
lot of information here. Okay.
right. Duncan Fern has brought them all to the island because he brought them Bryson and his sister Haley when they were children to the island, very close to by where this manor is. Now, um, I have to sort of divert a little bit onto geography
That's
here with the.
that's
I
fine.
actually got a house. I've got a picture here. Like this is a picture.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it. That's a picture of the actual manor. This story is based on, called Mugdiston
Okay.
Manor, which is just up the road from me. And you've got this big manor, big garden, and then you go through the garden, and there's a gate at the bottom. Go through the gate and you climb up onto the downs, and there's a house all on its own on these downs opposite this thing called the Longstone.
Okay.
And they used to stay, Duncan and his family stayed in this solitary house up on the downs that it actually looked down on this manor he's staying in now. And he stayed there and something very, very significant, an accident happened there. And he's coming back for a reason, actually. And you will discover that in the book. So the past is actually part of this story. So he's come back for that. And Haley particularly has bad memories of it. And she comes and you can tell she's all on edge because some of the stuff, she was only young, but it's sort of coming back to her. And it unfolds as the book goes on.
Wow. And now this is over the Christmas holiday season?
Yeah, they come on the Thursday night before Christmas Day is on the Sunday. They come Thursday night when there's a murder. Then you have Friday and Saturday, Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day. You have Boxing Day, and then of course you had the Christmas party. So yeah, I really wanted it completely and utterly soaked in Christmas. This story.
Twixmas. That I had never heard of Twixmas until I read your book. What is Twixmas?
Right, it's an interesting one, but to be honest, I didn't know that much about it. I wanted them to be staying a couple of days after Christmas, and I wanted to have this party the day after Boxing Day, which for us is Boxing Day is the 26th, and then I wanted a party on the 27th. And so I'd started reading up about Twixmas, which is a name they give because you're between Christmas and New Year, and you can really make it whatever you want, which I think is rather nice, actually.
It
So,
is.
yeah, I have a Twixmas ball, which was great fun to write. Actually, it was good.
It is because leading up to Christmas, everybody's filled with parties and everything else, and then New Year's has its own thing. So this is a nice time if you can't get together before Christmas, between Christmas and New Year. It's perfect. I love the idea. I love the concept, and I
Yeah,
thank you.
I think that really should be happening. I think it's a lovely idea because I think
It is.
otherwise you're just Otherwise, people are just waiting for New Year's Eve, aren't they?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's a shame because
Yeah.
actually, particularly like if you're doing a lot of the catering or something for
Mm.
Christmas, you can actually sit back and relax. That's why I love Boxing Day and the day after
Mhm.
because I can go, oh, no more cooking, no more shopping for a day or two. It's nice.
There you go. Now, my wife, who is Romanian, had never heard of Boxing Day. So, for those who don't know it,
Uh,
fill us in. What is Boxing Day?
yeah, I think it's quite a British thing, I think. It's, well, just the day after Boxing Day, and I think it various people say that it's got roots from when you box all the Christmas things up, but I don't think that's quite true. Um, I think there was a time when a lot of people actually would get married on Boxing Day because yeah, it was still holiday. So when people had much less a holiday from leave from work, they would get married Boxing Day. But it tends to be there are quite a lot of traditions around it in that you tend to have it's meant to be like leftover turkey and mash, and it's you using your leftovers really.
Other than the Fern family, and this, I love this. I gotta be honest, I love this. Other than the Fern family, every other character in your book just has a first name. You don't attach last names to them. Why is that? Because it is so ingenious.
Well, I do it because I'm very aware of the reader with names, and I think too many names just gets too much. You'll notice all my characters' names start with a different initial, and it's just little things that I'm trying to help the reader not get overwhelmed with the number of characters there are. And I suppose that surname, I have a surname only when it's really important, like bringing the fern family together. But I just think it's another name for people to take on. And I think you've got quite enough names to take on as it is.
Your narrator and main character who's flown through these last three books is Susan.
Yeah.
Now, apparently the police don't like her too much, and I don't know why, because something must have happened.
Yeah, I think what it is one particular police officer who doesn't like her, who is DC Kent. And they meet in the first one, and she sees Susan as a bit of a busybody and getting in the way, really. And it's also quite annoying because Susan guesses things that she doesn't. And I've seen that sort of trope in other books before. There's Agatha Christie uses it in a Miss Marple. There's a detective Slack, and they keep meeting up and clashing. And I quite liked it. And I thought, oh, I'm going to carry that on in the next one because we're on the island. It's a small island. We're not going to have that many police officers, so it's feasible that they'll keep meeting up. So really, it's between them and sort of the clash. So I'm enjoying writing that.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, because of the time of year and because of a snowstorm, which we'll talk about in a minute also, we don't see DC Kent too often in this book, if I'm not mistaken.
No, well, I think when you're doing an amateur detective, um, you're choosing to write sort of something that's sort of almost aside from a police force. And that's why, in some ways, you have to be careful how you choose your murder because it has to be generally something that could be interpreted as an accident by the police so that they lay off it. And that then gives your amateur detective somewhere to go with it. And so, yeah, so that's why they tend to be a bit further away.
Okay. Now, usually when you see a situation like this leads into what we call in America cozy mysteries. Okay. And cozy mysteries are the worst books in the world to read because they take place in Blueberry Hollow, on Strawberry Lane, and Peachtree Road. I mean, come on. No towns are like that. But this is where you're different, Mary. And I got to give it to you. Yours is more of the classic uh, mystery from that old gilded age of mysteries where, like Agatha Christie, you mentioned Dorothy Sayers, the Guy Marsh. Yours is much more like that. You don't cozy it up. You do a wonderful job. Again, was this a deliberate on your part?
Yeah, yeah, it was. And when I saw you'd written that down, I nearly cried because I was so pleased because I think people don't sometimes quite know what to do I get a cozy label sometimes because I don't have explicit sex, I don't have a lot of violence, and I don't have swearing. Well, not bad swearing anyway. So I think that can, and we're on an island in villages. But my background is Agatha Christie and Whodunit, and that I'm very plot driven. That's where I spend my hours and hours doing plot. So it's who done it. That's what my books are all about. And so the cozy bit is source. I don't think it quite fits actually, but I think people put it on there because of those other things I mentioned. But no, it's not particularly cozy. I think it's quite dark actually.
I think they always credit Agatha Christie with the development of this genre. I think she'd be
Mm,
appalled if she came back and saw what people are writing now as cozy
exactly.
mysteries. Yeah.
Well, honestly, have people who ever talk about Agatha Christie ever read things something like "And Then There Were None," which it nearly freaked me out when I first read it because it is so dark and so scary, and
Hmm.
there's nothing cozy about a lot of her books, actually.
No, no. How about what was set on the island? 10 Little Indians? Was that the one set on the island?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was then the title. "Then There Were None" is the new title
Hmm.
of that.
Okay. All right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
You living on an island. Whoa, oh,
Whew,
watch out.
I know, I know.
I worry. Well, that's just wonderful. It's refreshing to read somebody who's writing this type of book in this type of manner. I really found it spectacular. Now, one person you do have on here is a 92-year-old woman. Who is she, and what
Um,
is she in all your
Alice.
books? Yeah.
Yep. Alice is really important to me. I mean, I made Susan older uh, on purpose because I think our societies nowadays are so ageist. It makes me really cross. People get away with saying things about old people they could never say about anyone else. So I made Susan my active, very bright detective, and Alice, who is in her 90s, in a care home. She is as bright as a button, and she is my Miss Marple in many ways. She's very straight. The thing is, what people forget about older people is they've seen it all. Nothing surprises them. They know a lot, and they there's no messing with them. And so she's often saying to Susan, "I think what you mean is that's killed." Because Susan's always pussyfooting around trying to find nicer words for things, and she said, and Alice just goes, "Shup, no. What you're saying is this has happened." And she sees through people's lies. She sees through people because older people have seen a lot. They know people. And I think it's about time somebody started shouting out for older people because
There you
I
go.
honestly, the birthday cards and things get me really cross because they're so awful. So many of them for older people. They're either
They
flowers
do.
or quite rude.
That's right.
So
Yep.
that's my rant about older people.
That's okay. So we have Alice. She's in all three of these books. I have it on the
Mm, yeah,
Isle of Wight killings. Okay. Very good. All
yeah.
right. Now, you know, Duncan Fern was not a nice man. He
No.
he and his family, and this is what brings up some of this friction. He and his family feud all the time, and
Yeah.
he wants to use them in his tabloids and expose what. I'm amazed at this. What gave you that idea to do it that way?
Right. I'll tell you a secret, actually. My inspiration for this book came from an Agatha Christie called Hercule Poirot's Christmas, which I read probably 30 years ago. And I've reread a number of Christmases where it's an older man who gets murdered at Christmas. And he's a very unlikable character as well. And I think when I read it, I remember thinking, one day I'm going to write my own version of of this because I find it the idea of this character who's like a puppet master within their family, um, suddenly being brought
Yeah,
down, absolutely gripping,
yeah.
really.
It's fantastic because you have him feuding basically with every person who's there, one manner or the other. The daughter and her trainer boyfriend. You've got the mystery writer with the food critic, and the only person I'm not sure. Does he fuss with Antoine? Does he get upset with Antoine also?
Yeah, they have a big row.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's
Yep.
right. They do.
Because
Yep, that's right.
he's old school really, and I tried to sort of not as a tabloid, there was, all that phone tapping and things, all that there were the scandals. And really, I've tried to keep it up to date. And you see, Antoine is living in that space, whereas Duncan's still behind it, where you do anything for a story. And Antoine's saying, hang on a minute, we're going to get sued if you do that now. So they're sort of, you know, arguing.
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, didn't they did a sensationalized story on some girl,
Yeah,
and didn't she kill herself, or was she died after the
yeah.
story was put out?
Yeah, Isabel. She's in a sense, she's another character, very much another character in the story, but you just never meet her. And I found it I suppose that was a bit I felt quite passionate about that bit of the story because I do feel that people get exploited sometimes and private things that you'd never print about anyone else get printed. And we forget that there's people behind it all who get hurt.
Yeah. Yep, there's a human being underneath the, exterior. That's absolutely correct. Wow.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, it was well done. Now tell me just a little bit about, because this other character, his, Duncan's new wife. What's going on with her? Tell
Kirsten.
us a little bit about that glamorous American.
Yeah. Yeah, he's sort of well, I suppose it's a how do I explain it? It's a Christmas story, and I wanted that sort of an edge of glamour to it as well, and she brings that. I don't know whether you've ever seen films on um Murder on the Orient Express and things. That was another one that was sort of seeping in because that's in the snow and that there's very glamorous characters in there. And I actually really love Kirsten. I think she's she looks one thing and she's another. And I think she's very easy to underestimate. And as we get on with the book, you discover a vulnerability about her as well as cleverness. So she's, and also it gave me a chance to bring in like American side of Christmas as well. Because I haven't said my son is living in America. So I said to him, can you tell me some differences? And so through her, I was able to feed some differences.
Now, in your book, and I'm assuming it's in all three of these, and or all five set on the island. The island is a setting. The settings are there from actual things. Now, you
Yeah.
showed us a picture, but let's talk a little bit about Longstone. Okay, and then
Mhm.
I think what is it called? Tennyson Down. Is that the other one? They both make it into the book.
Right, the long stones, I'll show you. I don't. Can you see it? There you are. Look at it. It's actually two stones. There's a smaller one and a longer one. And if you think of it, it's a bit like our sort of mini Stonehenge. Really, it's from the same sort of time. It's a Bronze Age burial site originally, but there's also a lot of myth and legend around it. And it's the idea is the legend is that Saint Catherine and the devil had a battle for the soul of the island, and they both threw these stones, and fortunately, St. Catherine won. But there's huge significance around these stones, so they're fantastic to use in a story because they have all this history going on with them, and this. You go up there. I went up at night just to see what it felt like, and it's dead creepy. It's very good. The flatter stone looks just like a sacrificial stone from something like Death of the
Oh,
D'Urbervilles. It's
yeah.
amazing up there. Amazing.
Now, let's talk Tennyson Down. What is Tennyson Down?
Well, Tennyson Down is a walk, a long, long walk from the top, all along the top. My husband and son have done it. And Tennyson Down is the poet Tennyson. He There's a big monument on top of his down because he lived here, I think, for the summers or something, and he used to walk up there. So it's just a beautiful walk where you see all over the island and into the Solent and things.
You use that, and I think you even have the local beaches take a part in this book too.
Mm.
Don't they all go down to the beach?
Yeah,
That's a big part. Yeah.
we use Compton Beach a lot because that's my family beach, really. It's huge, it's very long, and it's beautiful. It's a terrible walk down, but it's worth every step of it. And it's got it's actually got some dinosaur footprints fossilized down there that you just walk past them and go, oh look, there's dinosaur. We're called Dinosaur Isle because they found so many dinosaurs on the island. So I've used that quite a lot, that idea of the past still being with us, and we look down and just in the same way we see the dinosaur. I call it the island that doesn't forget because it sort of remembers things and people.
Now, we're not going to give anything away, but I think your narrator went down to that beach. Almost didn't make it back, if I'm not mistaken. What happened to Susan down there?
Actually, that was over at Ventnor Beach. There's a
Oh,
tradition
okay.
over here for people going swimming on Boxing Day. Why, I don't know, but they all go swimming in the sea. And it's freezing, freezing cold. And the party, the Fern party, and she's helping look after them in this little hotel. They decide they want to take part in that. So Susan goes with them, and it gets
Okay.
very, very scary.
Does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Well, it's, like I said, really interesting. And I like the fact that do you use these locations or other locations in the other books?
Yeah, quite a lot. Ventnor's in there quite a lot. One or two places I rename. I try to keep to main names, but like the village Susan lives in, I've called Bishopstone. Everybody round here knows it's based on Pryston, but I don't want the people in the shop thinking I'm writing about them type thing. But all the big things are their proper names.
Okay. That's good. Now, let's talk a bit about red herrings because this book is filled with red herrings and misdirections. And ay, 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 how many red herrings are there in this book? Have you ever counted them up?
No, I don't. I tend to I go back and forth when I'm writing, and I change my mind about things, and I go back and forth, and I'll fill things in. But to me, red herrings aren't just, they have to be subtle. And because in many ways, I feel like I'm playing the game with the reader, really. I am, trying to do something, catch you out. And thing is, I have lived and breathed whodunits since I was about 12. So I know all the tricks of the trade, just about, I think. So my favorite red herrings, and this is a bit of a clue for anybody who's going to read the next one, is to put one in that the reader will think they're the only one who's seen it, and they're thinking they've been really clever and picked it up. So it's like a double bluff. They're my favorite red herrings. And I do quite a lot of playing around. In fact, I did a radio interview last Sunday afternoon, local radio. And I went in and the chap said he'd read the book, which was lovely. But when I went in, he had all these tabs all the way through the book. And he sort of writes down notes. I've got a few readers like this. They write down notes all the way through because they're trying to catch, but he hadn't caught the but it makes me work really hard at my books.
Mhm. Right, it does. Do you think it's harder to write red herrings than to write the actual uh, ending of the book?
No, probably not. I think writing the ending is always hard because I think you've gone on this huge journey and it's knowing what to reveal. I think the hardest thing for me is knowing what to reveal when and how, really, because you can't leave it all to the end because otherwise it just people are sort of bamboozled. But I also like to have an ending and a tiny little bit afterwards, just a little twist. Nothing huge. You know, don't tell you all a murder and then choose something else. But I like to have a little twist that people maybe not have thought of as well.
Now, Susan, what is Susan? I mean, she's our narrator, the amateur sleuth. What was her job?
Yeah, she was a teacher. Yeah, she was. But we meet her when she's actually finished work, and in the first one of these three books, in Death at Castle Cove, her husband suddenly left her after 40 years of marriage, and he's just finalising the divorce, and so she is just still catching her breath from this shell shock, really. Her and her husband lived in Ventnor for 40 years. She was a history teacher, but she loves music. They had foster children as well as her daughter Zoe. And she had this whole life. And suddenly he just sat down. He was a doctor. And he sat down one evening. And I have actually heard of this happening. He sat down and said, "Oh, by the way, I don't love you anymore. I have been seeing somebody else and I'll be leaving." And that's how she finds out. She knew nothing. So she's really sort of building her new life. But she's got a lot of oomph about her. I like her. She's always fought for causes, and she's a good woman.
And then, of course, in this book, here he's trying to get back again. Here he's going to come back. What a pain! But that gets again,
Oh,
this is another thing where, yeah, let's see involved, That's a great use of that.
I get as much post about Susan and her ex Steve and the new Robert as I do about my plots. Because people care. They care about people, don't they?
Yeah.
And they say, please don't let her go back to Steve. Don't let her go back to Steve. Just don't let her go back to Steve. And who knows? Who knows? I'm not giving anything away.
Okay. Well, that leads me to my last question here. As what is next for Mary Grand? What are you working on? Are we going to be seeing more of Susan? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, it is really exciting. The next one, it's going to be set in a castle, which is just up from where I live, and it's yeah. I discovered about a year ago that this beautiful castle called Carisbrooke Castle, close to me, you can actually stay in it overnight. And when they shut the doors, literally, it's just this one group of people left, and you've got all the battlements and everything to yourself. And I thought, ooh, wow. And I've been asked to write a book around Halloween time. So I've been going up and down. I went on the ghost walks and all this sort of stuff. So it's, yeah, that's where I am for the next one.
Okay. Now, do we know when that one's going to come out?
I think it's aimed for July next year.
Okay.
So
All right. So it's
yeah.
not a summer, not a wintertime book. It's a summer book. Okay.
Well, it's what I've discovered. Like I discovered with this my first ever Christmas book. You see, publishers do everything months before you think they're going to. So, like my Christmas book came out in August because apparently all the Christmas books come out in August. So, although it's Halloween, they need time for it to get traction and get noticed. As though hopefully that by the time you actually get to the time of it, it's well and truly on its way.
Well, that's is what I'm looking for now. Do you have an idea as to how many books you want to write in this series?
No. No, I don't. No, not
Okay.
really. I know I planned the next 2,
Okay.
but
Good.
whether Susan will carry on with Susan after that, I don't know. I have to talk to my editor about that.
Ah, okay. Well, I understand. Oh, I forgot to ask. What about that snowstorm? Do you get a lot of snow over in the Isle of Wight?
No! It's really funny. I've done quite a few talks over here and things about the book. And every time I look at them, because they're islanders, I'm talking to, and I say, "Look, I know, we don't get snow, and it's very frustrating. But this is a book. This is
That's
fiction."
that's right. And matter of fact, doesn't the cover of the book have snow on the cover also?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, look at it. Look at I'll just show
Yeah.
you the cover because
Show that cover to everybody there. There you go. A Christmas Murder. There you go, by Mary Grand. You can't beat it,
I think it
folks.
probably looks back to front to you. Oh, it's the most beautiful cover. It's
It is a
gorgeous.
beautiful cover. I don't read many Christmas books. Not that I don't like Christmas books. I just don't have time to read Christmas books. I had to choose
Mm.
one this year, friends. It's this one. This is the only book I
Oh,
chose. And I got to be honest with you, Mary, I chose well. It was a wonderful,
thank you.
wonderful effort. And you are lovely and delightful. I had a wonderful time chatting
Oh,
with you.
I have as well. Thank you.
Well, good. Thank
Yeah,
you for coming on Books and Looks. We appreciate it.
absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
The Isle of Wight. Who would have thought that, friends? All that intrigue, all that murder, all that excitement going on over there. If there's a book you want to get for this Christmas, hey, A Christmas Murder is perfect. It is, again, as I said, it's that golden age of detective stuff. Just like that, it does not devolve into a cozy mystery. So I'm glad she told us all that. I love it. Great author, and hey, coming to us there from the British Channel, and she's Welsh. So I'm going to tell you what, we got a lot going on here with Mary. So, hey, listen, what am I looking at? I'm going to tell you what I'm looking at. In fact, I want to look at. Oh, there went my earphone. There, I'm going to go on, folks. I'm just keeping going. Okay, all right. I dropped my earphone, but anyway, hey, what's going on? I'm going to tell you what. I'm looking at the book called Firebrands. Firebrands by Goya Diliberto. Now, what is this about? This is about prohibition. Okay, and just like we had Street Fight and we thought it was about Al Capone, no, this is about 4 women. Two who were in favor of prohibition and 2 who helped to repeal prohibition. It is a fascinating look at that time of and that era and the effect of women, because women had just gotten the right to vote, but they weren't voting that much. Instead, they were out for, again, prohibition. Fascinating book. That's coming up next week. Hey, sorry my earpiece went out. You know what? Hey, it's a lot of fun. You never know what's going to happen. So anyway, on behalf of my good friends at Podcast Studio X, this is Blaine DeSantis for Books and Looks saying may all your leaves be pages in a book.